All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another day of SaberSim's DFS office hours. Today is Monday, February 24th of 2025. And looking ahead here, we have a 7-game NBA main slate tonight, as well as a 2-game NHL slate. So it should be a fun day of DFS. For those of you who are new here, welcome. My name is Andrew, one of the coaches over here at SaberSim. This is a show where we go over how to use the SaberSim app, answer any and all DFS-related questions. Get your questions in one of three ways here. First off, send us an email, support@sabersim.com. Second, post it live in the YouTube chat. Third way, post it in the office hours channel in our Discord server. If you're not in our Discord and want to get access to that channel, there is a link in the description of this video. You also get access to our similar channels, individual sport channels, and you get access to the rest of the SaberSim teams. Can't say enough good things about the Discord. But with that said, we do the show Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern, and then we do the show on Saturdays at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. So tune in any one of those days, get your questions answered. All right. With that said, let's get SaberSim up here, and we are going to start answering questions. We will start top down in the chat here. Looks like we'll be working through the questions that came in the Discord first, and then jumping into any questions that roll in live. So, first question of the day. Last night, I had 90 lineups total. I had 50 in the main contest and 20 in 220 maxes. I attempted to dupe 30 of them and have a total of 50 throughout 90 available. Easy enough for the initial build, but in the late swapping, it doesn't give me the option of using 50 lineups as it does in the initial build. I ended with 78 total, an additional 28 I didn't want through late swapping. How do I control this in the app, or is that something I need to do, something I need to copy and paste in a separate spreadsheet? Okay, good question. First off, this is definitely something you can do inside of SaberSim, okay? So we do have the ability for you to maintain the original number of unique lineups that you had pre-built, okay? So let's say you have 50 lineups pre-built across 90 entries, and you only want to keep those 50 entries. You want to basically late swap a lineup that may be in multiple contests, but you want that new lineup to be the same still. Okay, so that's what we're talking about here for anyone not following. You can do this, and there's not a late swap slate active here, but I've been using our late swap tutorial to show this. I've found this is like the easiest way to do this. So I'm going to pull it up here. This is in our support docs in case you guys haven't seen it and you want to check it out. So when you go to late swap, okay, you're going to get this pop up. So like this is a slate in progress. Okay. Late swap button, big green button here right next to a regular build. You get this pop up. What you need to do, turn on this group duplicates toggle. Okay. What this will do is it will say if there is any lineup in more than one contest, we are going to swap the lineup, but we are going to put that same new lineup into all of those contests that the lineup is in. So this is looking at it on a lineup level. It's like, hey, this lineup in 3 contests, put one new lineup into all 3 contests. Okay. So if you just in your late swap pop-up, turn on group duplicates, it will work exactly the way you are describing. So try that out when you play later today or next time you play, and let me know if that works the way you intended. All right. Good one there to get us kicked off. Next question, another late swap one. Is it best practice to not apply filters such as ROI greater than 0 during a late swap? Good question. So ROI greater than 0, I would not use. And the reason for that is, okay, so let's just look at like a payout structure for a contest, right? Say you're playing, some lineups in the flagship, right? 33% to first, 20.4% cash. So we'll just say 20%, right? So what does this actually mean? So, let's say you're playing 20 lineups, right? In the 150. Okay. So if I take 20 lineups and I times it by 0.2, which is 20%, the number I get is 4. What does this mean? I did this on a different screen. Okay. So I did, let's just redo it. So 20 lineups, the cash rate is 20%. So you do 0.2 equals 4. Okay. what this means is that if I enter 20 lineups into the 150 max contest, on average, I am going to cash, I can expect to cash 4 lineups. Okay, this means 16 lineups are likely not even to be in the money. Okay, this kind of you know, I do this, I talk about this sometimes. I'm like, it's like, wow, you know, I think people expect to cash at like a way higher rate than they should, because you know, you should have 16 lineups in the gray, right? Not in the green, and only 4 in the green. Okay, this is before taking into account any skill advantage. Okay, so now if this is the case, right, you can expect that in late swap, a certain number of your lineups in the late swap contest sim are just not going to be positive ROI, unfortunately. So like, you might have a lineup that, you know, starts off really poor, and you still want to late swap that lineup. Okay, but what you're trying to do is you're trying to make the lineup less negative ROI. So like, you're trying to take, you know, a negative 50% ROI lineup and turn it into a negative 25% ROI lineup, a negative 10% ROI lineup, right? You're trying to get back as much ROI as possible for an underperforming lineup. If you apply a filter that says only show me lineups with ROI greater than 0, there are going to be some lineups in your contest that you're playing that don't have any positive ROI options. Therefore, you're going to get stuck with the original lineup, because it's going to say, hey, there are no swap options available that are meeting the request the user is making. When that happens, you just get stuck with your original lineup, which in this case would actually be lower ROI than one of the less negative ROI options. Okay, so that's why we don't recommend applying a ROI greater than 0 filter in late swap, because sometimes you're just going to have some lineups that won't have any positive ROI options, and you might actually end up in more of those scenarios than you think once you start thinking about the math a little bit here. So don't use that one. If there are other filters you want to use, you know, maybe keeping your sum ownership down, maybe, you know, guaranteeing a certain projection, right? I think it's like probably fine to still use those. I don't see why not. The only concern I would have with the ownership one is make sure you're switching to a live ownership source, right? So for instance, you know, you make your filter based on the my own column, but once the slate starts, the my own, which is showing the SaberSim ownership, these won't change. Okay, so this is actually something good to talk about as well. And we could probably go to a past slate to talk about this. This is probably a little bit better. So let's say we go to the main slate from NBA for yesterday, right? Okay, now if I come in here to the ownership column, sort by ownership. So notice there are 2 sets of ownership here, right? We have our SaberSim ownership, and then there is SaberSim live ownership. Okay, so the SaberSim ownership is the ownership before the slate starts. Any adjustments to ownership that occur while the slate is active go to the SaberSim live ownership option. So what would cause this to occur, right? It's mostly players getting ruled out, starting lineup changes, all those type of things, right? So I don't know exactly what happened yesterday. Actually, I think Darius Garland got ruled out at some point, right? So if I come into the SaberSim ownership before the slate started, no, not really. He wasn't really high owned. But maybe Cleveland changed. I don't know. We'll see. So I can look at the ownerships for Cleveland, right? So Mobley 20, Struss 18, Allen 17, Mitchell 14, right? And then if I go and I switch it to SaberSim live flagship MME live option, well, then a lot of these guys actually come up, right? Ty Jerome goes to 30% because Garland got ruled out, and then, you know, that opened up additional minutes for him. Mitchell up to 25, right? He's a other high salary like shooting guard on the team, right? Remember, Mobley was the highest. If we go back, Mobley 20, Struss 18, Mitchell was at 14, Jerome was at 5. And then we go to live. Well, Jerome goes from 5 to 30. Mitchell goes from like 14 to 25, right? So a lot of these guys moved around. This is what the live ownership is accounting for, right? So if you are building your lineups, and we'll just go here, we'll go to 500 lineups. Reminder, we're building lineups for yesterday, so we could do this, right? And we'll let these lineups run. All right, lineups are finishing up. So we go to the filter, and then we go show lineups. We're going to say ownership less than X, right? And we're just making something up here. So I don't know, what would be 200%? Let's see if that has an impact. Okay, so 200%, right, puts 6 lineups in the trash. So let's go a little bit higher or lower, actually. Let's go like 175. See what this does. So at 175, we have 64 lineups in the trash. Okay. So this filter is looking at the my own column and then updating the sum ownerships. And then the filter is reading the sum ownerships and then deciding which lineups to put in the trash. So right now there's 64 lineups in the trash and it's going off of the my own. Okay. So let's switch it back to the flagship MME option, right? Now you can see that the trash is 27 lineups. So the lineups in our pool have higher sum ownership for the MME live option, which makes sense, right? Because some of these plays appeared good plays, and then SaberSim got to more of them in this, post-mortem build that we ran, as opposed to pre-slate, right? So just if you're using something like this in late swap, my point was to make sure to go into the my own gear icon, change the source so the right ownership can be used so the builder can determine how many lineups to put in the trash, okay? Because you don't want to use the filter with stale ownership projections. You want to use the latest and greatest stuff based on all of the updates to players, player news, minute changes, projection changes, all of those things, okay? All right. Good question there. Next one. Hey, Andrew, I saw this partnership between SaberSim and Ship It Nation. Does anything change for SaberSim users? Are we now getting Ship It Nation projections or no changes from our end? Thank you. Okay. Yeah, we did Ship It Nation hosted a stream earlier today, and Jordan from our team jumped on there. But yes, Ship It Nation is going to be our next and newest partner. We're very excited about that. As far as how that affects SaberSim users, it's not going to affect them at all. Basically, the Ship It Nation subscribers can get the SaberSim projections, but how do I say this? We're almost giving them our projections as part of their packages, but we're not adding new packages that include their projection. So it's only kind of going one direction and not the other. Okay. So that's probably the easiest way to think about it. If you're interested in getting access to our projections plus their projections, you could check out their newest Saber. They're calling it SaberSim offers. So Saber plus Ship It Nation. And you can check that out on their website. But other than that, no changes for SaberSim users. Business as usual on our end, our end here. All right. Good stuff there. Next question. Is there a way to fix the wide range of results I'm getting, or is that just how the sims work? Yesterday, I had one lineup in all the contests I entered finish in the top 0.5%, but the other lineups were so far out I didn't profit. For example, in one of the 20 maxes, my best lineup was 26 out of 4161, and the worst was 4001 out of 4161. Okay, so this is kind of interesting, right? First off, I don't know how many lineups you played, right? But if you just, we bring up our calculator again. If you got one lineup in the top 0.5%, I don't know how many lineups you played, right? But what are your chances of doing that? Your chances of doing that are 1 in 200, right? So if you move the decimal 2 places, it's 0.5, right? This would be 0.5%. So on average, you can expect 1 out of 200 lineups to get into the top 0.5% of a contest. Okay. Now, did you say how many lineups you played? I'm not sure how many, because you said one of the 20 maxes, but let's say you played 5 20 maxes, right? For instance here, or even this one, right? This is the one like where it occurred. If you're getting in, the top 0.5% of a contest with 20 lineups, that's great. You are beating your expectation heavily, right? Even if you played 5 20 maxes, you're ahead, right? So like you should expect if you played 10 20 max contests, I imagine just raw math, one lineup across your 10 20 maxes would get to the top 0.5% of a contest on average, right? Okay. So if you're beating that, if you're playing 5, if you're playing 4, if you're playing 3, that's really good, right? You're way ahead, and there's probably like some skill advantage there, right? So don't get discouraged by that. Second part is, that you mentioned, like, hey, I had, one lineup finish 26, one lineup finish 4001. In my opinion, that is actually kind of good, actually kind of normal, right? And the reason I say it's good is it tells me that your lineups are most likely well diversified, right? DFS is a very much, if you're not first, you're last type of, or how I approach DFS is with a very, if you're not first, you're last mentality. And the reason for that, right, is again a math problem. So we said earlier that like, hey, the top 20% of lineups get paid. Okay. So that means like your raw chance of cashing is about 1 in 5, right? Like 1 out of 5 lineups should cash. Okay. 20%. Now, the problem with that is that when you do cash, you're not getting paid 5 to 1 on your money. You're not getting paid 4 to 1 on your money, right? You're getting paid like 1.5x, 1.8x, maybe 2x. I think FanDuel runs some like 2x min cash contests. But my point is that, imagine going to like the casino and you go play roulette and, the odds that you hit a number is, I don't know, 36 to 1, 37 to 1, depending on like how many zeros there are on the table. And when you go and you finally hit your number, they're not paying you 35 to 1. They're paying you like 15 to 1. You're like, whoa, why am I getting paid 15 to 1? Like, that's crazy, right? So my point is that, if you're trying to just like cash and get across the cash line, you're going to end up losing in DFS. DFS is one, or, the way you stay in the DFS ecosystem is really by having top finishes, because like you go and you see these payout structures, right? 33% of the prize pool goes to first, 25% of the prize pool goes to first, 10% is kind of flat, 22%, 16%, right? So some of these, double digit numbers, like you need to win a contest every once in a while to get that big lump sum win in order to, pay for all those like losses and all of those times where, you're not getting paid like kind of equally on the chances that you come in and cash, right? So like DFS is a very much like big win, lose, big win type of graphs as far as like bankroll graphs go and stuff, right? So if you have one lineup finishing, 26 and one lineup finishing toward the end, I think that's actually like really, really cool, because that tells me like, hey, you're playing a well-diversified set of lineups. Your lineups have good upside, and I would actually be really happy with that, right? So something else I want to see here. I think there's like one screenshot in particular that I can think of. I want to see if I can pull it up. See, this is a good one, right? This is a RBX88, one milli maker using SaberSim. And like, look how spread out this is, right? It's like one lineup first, one lineup like really close to the end, and then a couple in the middle, right? So like, this is obviously like top 0.1%. Another one, probably like 15th percentile. Another 2 or 3 here, like 40th, and then one like down in like the 90th, right? Very, very spread out. Like this is super good. I think there's one from Squid I want to see. Okay, this is another good one, right? So this is another one. This is the one I was thinking of where Giant Squid won a milli maker. Like, look how spread out this is. You see like a small cluster toward the top. You see a couple around the cash line, a couple like 50th percentile, and then another cluster toward the back, right? Like, it almost sounds like you're describing this, right? You're like, hey, I have some lineups like toward the front. I have some lineups toward the back. And, like, unfortunately, you didn't win the contest, right? Came in 26, still pretty high, obviously. But I think that, we're seeing those same clusters like from top players winning big prizes, right? I actually think like you don't want to stray from that. And, yeah, you could bring more lineups maybe closer to the cash, but then you might bring some of your top lineups further away from first place, right? So like that's what I'm trying to like get across is like, you want your lineups to be able to go all the way to the right, and which is like winning the contest, right? But it's almost like you got to think about it where it's like, okay, if I'm building lineups that have a higher chance of getting first place, I am also assuming like equal opportunity of the lineup coming in last place, right? Because it kind of goes together, right? If you can go further to the right, well, guess what? Conversely, you can also go further to the left, right? So if you want to have lineups that can come in first, you got to be like willing to take some of those times where they come in last as well. And then if you're trying to, bring the lineups that are coming in last, like closer to the cash line, you might end up hurting yourself and actually bringing lineups that have more upside and bringing the upside down and bringing lineups that get further closer to the middle, right? So be careful with that line of thinking there. I hope some of these screenshots kind of make that make sense, tied together with my explanation here. But that's the way I would be thinking about it. If you're concerned, more about how your lineups are performing overall, you can always sign up for one of our build review shows. We do this show on Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern. Just let me know either in Discord or send us an email, support@sabersim.com, and tell me like, hey, can you review my builds from this day, from this sport, for this slate, and I can add you to the list for the next show. So we can always do that as well, to dive a little bit deeper into how your lineups look and different changes that we can make to how they're performing. All right. Good stuff there. We are caught up with questions here in the Discord so far. Nothing in the YouTube chat yet. So why don't we do a quick build demo for today? Hop over to Monday and come in and make 2 projection adjustments. I'm going to build 500 lineups. I would always build as many as your plan allows. I like to bump minimum salary slightly here, bumping it up to 49,000. 6-7 games on the main slate. This is considered like in our large slate, if you're using Saber score range here. So I think 49K is a fine number to bump it to. While these lineups build, I can go over the contest tab. Uploaded entries file. Here I'm just going to create a manual contest sim. So I'm going to use the $4.20 max as my example here. Jump back to my build. And just waiting for these lineups to load. Can try and help it out a little bit. All right, lineups have loaded. Going to click Run Contest Sim here. Going to sort by exposure, adjust my columns the way I like them. Cool. Leverage, exposure, got projection, ownership, all visible here. So let's let this sim run. And it's finished. If you upload an entries file, it'll switch to ROI automatically for you. I'm using a custom sim, so I got to go change it. All right, I'm going to set up an average ROI aggregate metric. So I have projection, ROI. Again, these are describing the top 20 lineups that I'm viewing right now out of my 500 pool that I have available. And now I'm ready to start making some adjustments, right? Sorting by exposure, I can see the players that I'm getting to the most of. It's a good time to do some research, right? And kind of get familiar with the slate. So like here, my top 3 exposures are all Utah players. Okay. Well, kind of why is that, right? 2 of them are like in the 4K range. So it tells me that they don't regularly play this much, most likely. So I go to Utah, filter for them, sort by projection. I see all these out players, right? Laurie Markkanen, Jordan Clarkson, Walker Kessler, Colin Sexton, John Collins. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players over 6,000 salary out tonight. Okay, this makes a ton of sense why I'm seeing so much exposure to Utah, right? So that makes a ton of sense to me. I'm actually okay with having this, higher than normal leverage to these Utah players, which means I might be willing to use a lower number of min uniques here, since I'm kind of okay, since these guys are getting such a great opportunity to play a lot, and their salaries obviously aren't indicative of the usage that they're going to get tonight. Okay, so I'm going to still bump uniques a little bit here. Try go from 1 to 2. Try and go from 2 to 3. Okay, 3 is good. I've only dropped like 3% ROI. 3 to 4, a little bit bigger jump here, like 12-ish% and 2 points in projection. Let's see what my exposures look like there, right? So like at 3, I have an 85, 75, 70 to 3 Utah players. And then at 4, I have 70, 65, 60. So my Utah exposure is starting to come down, right? I'm kind of okay with the Utah exposure. So then now my only other question, right, is I'm going to basically ignore these high leverages and look at the other players below them, right? It's like, okay, I have one person at 30, one person at 23. At 4, I have one person at 21, and that's about it, right? So here I'm actually doing this a little bit different. I'm ignoring my top exposures and leverages because I like these, and I'm analyzing the ones below it, right? Personally, I would probably go with 3. I'm okay with the high leverage on Jamal Murray, and I'm not super concerned about any of the other ones. I'm basically saying I will take the high Jamal Murray leverage in order to keep the high Utah leverage, as opposed to getting a little bit flatter on the non-Utah players, but sacrificing some leverage on the Utah players, right? This is just the way that I personally want to approach this. So I would stick with 3, right? I think 4 is okay. You could go further if you want, but for me, 3 ends up being the right number. I click save, and then I'm ready to rock and roll. So that's how I'd be building lineups for NBA for tonight. But hope that helps you guys out, give you some ideas. In case you didn't know, Utah was missing a ton of players. Now you do. Follow up from Drummer Boy said, thanks for the explanation. It was 4 separate 20 maxes I max entered and all had a top 0.5 or better. Just wondering if that was the norm. That's great. That is definitely not the norm. It sounds like you built some pretty solid lineups. So keep it up. I'm glad that explanation helped. But looks like we're all set. Caught up with questions here. And we just knocked out a build demo. So appreciate you guys tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern for our next office hours show. So until then, everybody, take care. Good luck. Thanks. Bye.